one-handed, lots of notes. Hold on. Spilling me water. Excuse me. Made a mess of my water, but good morning.
Good morning.
If you're in the room, good morning. You've just said good morning to me. If you're online, hello. I'd like to hear you calling back, but I won't, I guess. So, be blessed. It's great to be in the presence of the Lord, in the presence of a group of people worshipping God in, just an amazing way. Just our hearts touched by the presence of God as we just worship Him and honour Him, for who He is and what He's done. Just want to add one notice, actually. Sorry, Mike, but this Tuesday is Filling Station, which is where various churches get together. Salvation Army, 7 to 7:30. People we know, David and Christine West, the Zozo people, are speaking at that event on Tuesday evening. So if you want to be inspired by them, rather than listening to me, get along there, come in for 7 o'clock for some cake, and then 7:30 worship, and then both of them will be speaking there. So that's this coming Tuesday. Live Lounge is the following Tuesday, and then from a Zozo viewpoint on the 20th, we've got the basic training event that David and Kristen will be coming to lead and do. So if you're interested in that, talk to us, and that should be going live on the website very soon as well. I'm conscious that a few weeks ago we left Jonah in a bit of a mess. Okay? Contrary to popular belief, he was not having a whale of a time. Sorry. He just wasn't. He wasn't. Oh, I was going to say, if any youngsters, if you want to write down the name of any animals that I mentioned, animals, birds, anything along those lines, through the sermon, write them down and see where we go, all right? I'll give you a clue. The first one's just happened. Sort of. But there you go. There you go. So, we've got this sense that this man has been spewed out on a beach. Yeah? Remember the story to date. Yeah? God gives him a very clear direction. Go to Nineveh and preach. That's the direction he gives him. He said, go do it. This is what I want you to do. This is my plan for you. This is what I want you to do. The very beginning of the book says, go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it because its wickedness has come up before me. We know the story. He runs away. He tries to go as far away in the opposite direction as he can muster. Big storm. He ends up getting thrown overboard with the expectation he will die. But God directs this massive fish to swallow him. And 3 days later, he's spewed out onto the beach. That's not him. Don't know who that is. But that's sort of a representation of man on the beach. I guess he wasn't spat out onto a beach full of tourists, as we would imagine. It wasn't neatly laid out towels and sun lounges. My sense is, no biblical proof of this, don't get me wrong, but my sense, my imagination is he was spat out onto a fairly lonely beach somewhere, and he's there thinking, again, this is my thoughts if I were him, am I alive? What has just happened? Where am I? It could be so much muddled stuff going on in his mind, I would imagine. But there he is. In chapter 2 of Jonah, he does call out. There's that sense of him calling out from within the fish, calling out to God, sort of recounting what's going on, what's happened, how terrible it all is. And then at the end of chapter 2, and the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. As I said last time, that fish was more obedient than Jonah had been. He did what God directed. Jonah was trying to do the exact opposite. And on the beach, thinking, I don't know, other things must be going through your mind. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. Lots of things must be horrendous. But just as he's thinking, I'm alive, have I got out of this situation? Because God had said go to Nineveh, and here I am on some beach somewhere. Have I dodged this one? Have I avoided the call? Have I got out of this? And then, chapter 3, as we see it, dawns with these words. Chapter 3, verse 1. He's on the beach, remember. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Was that not his worst nightmare? Did he not think he'd dealt with it? I've sorted this, I've been through the fish, I've sorted it all out. Surely no. The word of the Lord comes to him a second time, and the Lord repeats the call. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you. It wasn't as though he'd got to prepare a sermon. It wasn't as though he'd got to sit down and study. God says, I'm going to give you the message, you go and speak it out. What did he do? Well, verse 3 just says, Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord and went to Nineveh. He gave in. What choice did he have, to a degree? But yeah, he must have sort of oriented himself, worked out where he was, and he made his way to the place God had instructed him to go previously. It's a great story, but did that middle bit need to happen? Interesting thought. All this sort of go to Nineveh, go and do this. He ran away, all that we talked about last time, the whole incident with the fish, being spat out, lonely on a beach, and then God said it again, and he goes. Did that middle bit need to happen?
No.
If he'd have been obedient first time, wouldn't it have been much easier? Yeah. Now, there is stuff here that instructs us, and I'm sure Jonah, learned a lot. But there's part of me going, if you'd done as you were told first time, this wouldn't have happened. How many parents have said that to their children? Exactly. If only you'd have done what I told you first time, you'd have never fallen over. If you had to run off in front of me, you wouldn't have been flat on your face and grazed your nose or whatever. Yeah, it's like, if only we'd have listened to wise instruction, we wouldn't have taken the detour. Yeah. The detour can teach us stuff sometimes, but sometimes we look back and it wasn't necessarily a pleasant experience. But there we go. Jonah's example. This time, he's obedient. Jonah, verse 3, chapter 3. Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord and went to Nineveh. Now, Nineveh was a very large city. It took 3 days to go through it. So that sense of it being a big place, it's that sense of sort of if you were visiting it as a, mini break, weekend break, going to Nineveh, it's 3 days to walk across it. You wouldn't see everything in a day. It was a big city. Jonah began, verse 4, by going a day's journey into the city and then proclaiming, this was the message God gave him, proclaiming 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. Verse 5. The Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth. And when Jonah's warning reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his robes, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat down in the dust. This is the proclamation he issued in Nineveh. By the decree of the king and his nobles, don't let any people or animals, herds or flocks taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink, but let the people and animals be covered with sackcloth. Then everyone must call urgently on God. Let them give up their evil ways and their violence. Who knows? God may relent and with compassion turn from his fierce anger so that we will not perish. Remember, if you look at the scriptures, history, Assyria, particularly Nineveh, wicked place, full of lots of stuff that was very against God, anti-God, really not God's character, abuse, violence, wickedness, witchcraft, idolatry, all manner of stuff. And yet, in obedience to what God asked him to do, God begins to move the whole city. One man's obedience begins to move the whole city. God spoke to Jonah. Jonah spoke to the people around him in the city. God saves the city. It's an interesting, you don't need hundreds and hundreds of people to make a difference sometimes. It's one vision, because that vision is put there by God. Obedience to that call of God. Doing what God says. God changes things. God does his work. Verse 10, when God saw what they did, they were repenting, pleading with God to have compassion on them and turn from his anger. When God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on them the destruction he had threatened. God worked. Just remember, it's a phrase I read during the week. I actually can't remember who said it or where it came from. So sorry, whoever's phrase this is, I've stolen, but this is it. It's that sense of God's provision, not your performance. God doing stuff in accordance with the faith of Jonah eventually. But if you look at Jonah's performance, you wouldn't rate him too highly. Marks out of 10 Jonah for your faith, for your obedience, looking at the whole story. If you look at just this last bit, oh yeah, great, fantastic, 10 out of 10. If you look at the beginning, what are you going to give him? 4? Not a lot. But it wasn't about his performance. It wasn't about him directly. It was about God. It was about God's provision. God doing what he was going to do, not Jonah's performance. Because if it was solely about Jonah's performance, he would never have been there. He'd still be on the beach potentially, or dead. God's provision, not our performance. And we need sometimes to get that into our minds, that we get into a mindset sometimes that we have to do, we've got to be, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, and it's busy. It's strive. And sometimes God just says, no, all I ask of you is obedience to let me do the rest, let me provide the rest. Does that make sense? Maybe you can see times in your own life, in your own situations, where you've perhaps got a little bit too much into, or I've got a little bit too much into that striving for something. And I start to take the job that God has away from him, because I feel I've got to do this, and this. And actually God is calling me to be obedient and actually do what he says, and let God do the rest. It crosses my mind to a degree. Many of you will know we were away at David's tent, 72-hour worship event last weekend. We were doing Zozos pretty solidly through Saturday and Sunday. And it's like, actually, if I enter the Zozo session with a sense that I've got to perform, I've got to get this person in front of me to find some freedom, I'm striving, it's a struggle. What I have to do every time I sit down is like, wipe that thought from my mind, and it's not about my performance. What it's about is hearing from the Holy Spirit and relaying that to the person, or at least getting that person to communicate with the Holy Spirit, with God in his fullness. If I think about it as being my job to get that person free of something or prayed for, it doesn't work, because it's not. I'm a channel. I'm just a channel. I'm just a person that God's using to make it happen. That's who Jonah was. Jonah was a man who God wanted to use to bring this message. It's just that he chose not to do it for a while. So that sense of knowing that we don't need to strive, we don't need to fight, we don't need to fight against God and argue against God. Just listen, search the Word, hear what the Spirit say to us, and really seek to be obedient to what He wants us to do. Sometimes the but word is the problem, because you hear God say something, and actually what we want to say, but maybe that's not God. But I can't do this. But whatever. Jonah could have stayed on the beach. He could have found some fish, I'm sure. He'd have been fighting off the seagulls, no doubt, to try and make sure they didn't steal them, and all that sort of stuff. But he could have stayed on the beach. He could have found a shelter or something and to settle down. But no, he, in just plain obedience, said okay to God. Great story, happy ending, yeah? No, because chapter 4 story. Chapter 4 comes in, where you'd imagine, I just put in mind, doing Zozos last weekend, great fun, seeing people get set free, absolutely fine, seeing people, God just doing things in their lives, loved it, and then it's like, I was happy, and I was pleased to have seen God work and given Him the glory. Is that what Jonah was doing? God saying, God, you are great, fantastic, thank you for saving, for changing this wicked city of Nineveh. Fantastic, thank you, amazing God for what you've done, because I never thought you could do it, but you've done it, God. Is that what happened? No. Chapter 4 starts off, but to Jonah this seemed very wrong, and he became angry. So he's angry about what God had done. This is sort of weird. He's angry because God has saved the city. It's like me saying, I'm angry that you brought freedom to this guy in my Zozo tent just now. I'm angry because he doesn't deserve it. No, that's not the point. But that's where Jonah was. I get very grumpy about things. I didn't tell us to say this. Do you know, sometimes in our house, it's always a debate, who has first shower? Right, it's one of those things. You have the question, don't you? You have the shower first, or you? No, right? If Gwen has first shower, she often wipes the shower down, even if I'm following in quite quickly. Weirdly, that annoys me. I was thinking to myself, why does it annoy me? Well, partly it annoys me because in my head, she's wasted her time, because I'm going to wipe it down after I've done it anyway. But does it actually change what I do? No, I walk in the shower and I wipe the shower down after it, whether she'd wiped it down before me or not. But I get grumpy because I think, why did she wipe that down? What a waste of her time. And part of me's going, I'm doing this in her best interests. She needn't have used that muscle power to wipe that down, blah, blah, blah. But I'm thinking, it's a stupid little thing that actually sort of sets my mind of going, why should you do that? That's silly, blah, blah, blah. When it doesn't change at all what I'm going to do. Because I'm still going to have a shower and I'm still going to wipe it down myself. Does that make sense? Well, it's what we get angry about. It's like, it's stupid. But it's something that sparks me off at times. And there's Jonah, seeing this amazing thing God's done in saving this city, and he's going, that's just wrong. It's wrong. Why do you think it was wrong? Well, because he didn't like it. He didn't think they deserved it. So it's nothing about Gwen doing work that she didn't need to do type thing. It's very much, he didn't think those people in Nineveh deserved salvation. He didn't think they deserved to be saved. And he goes, it's weird that he's so angry. He prayed to the Lord. Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? So back to the first call, that this is what I tried to forestall by going to Tarshish. It's like I ran off to try and stop you doing this, God, because I didn't want you to do it. I didn't want you to free these people. I knew you were a gracious God, a compassionate God, slow to anger, abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. So he's attributing these attributes. Too many attributing. Anyway, he's saying how good God is, and yet I knew that, but I still wanted to stop you doing it. Jonah, what are you thinking here? You're trying to stop God doing this good thing. You thought you could stop God doing what he was going to do by running away. But he says, I knew you were gracious. I knew you abound in love. And he's so ridiculously angry. In verse 3 he says, no, Lord, take my life away. It's better for me to die than to live. Really? I might get frustrated about the shower being wiped down, but not that bad. It's not that bad. It sparks in my mind, but no, it doesn't. It's just so strange that he's physically saying, I am so angry that I think I should be dead. Just take my life. It's really not worth it. Take it away. I just think, what on earth is he saying? Where's this coming from? His hatred of Nineveh and all that it stood for was so great, and he's just so angry that God has saved them. I read, it's not a Christian comment, but I read some comments. It's from, I've got his name. I put his initials down here, I'm trying to remember what his name is. Stephen Bartlett, the guy that does Dragon's Den and other bits and pieces. Seems to be quite a clever guy. Seems to have quite a bit of money as well, but there we go. He wrote down a series of sort of life thoughts. One of them was, anger is fear in disguise. That's what he wrote down. Anger is fear in disguise. Jonah was so angry. Ultimately, that was being driven by his own fear. Originally he feared the Ninevites. He also feared perhaps what his own people were going to say to him, because he had gone into enemy territory, somewhere that they would not have recommended he goes, and that he would not have chosen to go, as we said. But he'd done this, and he's got to explain this to his own people. He's got to. So maybe there was this, but it's so often, and it's sort of a Zozo thought in many ways that anger is fear in disguise. We get angry because we're afraid of something. We don't know how to handle it. It could be anything. It could be, relationships. It could be family stuff. It could be something we've got to go through or do. And we get angry, but it's based in fear. It's based in fear because we don't know what's going to happen or how it's going to happen. And it comes out in anger. Anger can be driven by other things as well. But sometimes fear makes us angry because we don't know how to handle it. And really, perhaps we see that in Jonah. God's reply to his anger wasn't, stop it, you're not allowed to be angry, don't be silly, anger, you shouldn't be angry, no. God says, this is verse 4, chapter 4, is it right for you to be angry? This is the question God asks him. And actually, in our Zozo work, often we're asking people to ask God questions along those lines. Why am I fearful? When did fear enter my life? Where did fear come from? What's the root of my fear? And God asked this question: is it right for you to be angry? Now, Jonah, there's not a direct response. I'll read on just so you can hear the story. Verse 5. Chapter 4, verse 5. Jonah had gone out and sat down at a place east of the city. There he made himself a shelter, sat in its shade, and waited to see what would happen to the city. And God provided a leafy plant that would grow up over Jonah and give him shade for his head to ease his discomfort. And Jonah was very happy about the plant. He's happy about something. He's happy about the plant. He's got the shade that's keeping him cool. But at dawn the next day, God provided a worm, another obedient creature who did what God directed. God provided a worm, I've lost where I was, which chewed the plant so it withered. When the sun rose, God provided a scorching east wind, and the sun blazed on Jonah's head, so he grew faint. Here we go again, and he wanted to die. Sad man. But he was struggling. And he said, it would be better for me to die than to live. He repeats it again. And then God says, but God said to Jonah, is it right for you to be angry about the plant? So he's asked him, is it right for you to be angry? Implying that that's more about what he's done in Nineveh. And now he provides this shade for him and then takes it away. And then Jonah gets angry to the point where he wants to die about that now. It's not just about the fact he's saved, tens of thousands of people. Now he's angry about the fact that the plants died. And is it right for you to be angry about this plant that I gave you and I've taken away? Jonah's response is fairly straightforward. It is, and I'm so angry I wish I was dead. That's his response. He's got so angry with God now that it's almost irrational. Maybe he wished he was back on the beach because it was easier. I don't know. I can't entirely get inside his mindset, but you can imagine little snippets. So angry, he said, I'm so angry, I wish I were dead. But then the Lord said, you have been concerned about this plant, though you did not tend it or make it grow. It sprang up overnight, and it died overnight. And should I not be concerned about the great city of Nineveh? That's the question. He's concerned about what's happening in the moment. He's concerned, he's upset because God has done these mighty things and saved the city. But he's got himself so intensely wound up that even a plant is now winding up. God graciously starts to bring it back to him and says, hang on, I've saved the city. I made the plant grow. I made it die. Actually, because I saved the city because I wanted to do that. That's my plan. God's plan to save the city. So it's the sense of, surely, you need to recognise, this is what he's saying, God's saying to Jonah, as it were, you need to recognise that it's my heart, God's heart, to have concern and wish to save, as he describes it there, the great city of Nineveh. There's a lot of stuff here about us not being like Jonah, I guess, but choosing to be obedient to what God is calling us to do. Yeah, Jonah thought that the Ninevites deserved to be destroyed. That's the basis for this, because of what they've done. That's a human reaction. Sometimes we can have a similar reaction that someone, something, a group of people don't deserve respect, love, forgiveness, healing. Yet Jonah was ignoring the character of God and what the word says. And we know it, but sometimes we can still feel quite negative towards people. Jonah simply could not bring himself to forgive Nineveh, Assyria, for who they were, the past. And actually what we end up doing is the story leaves Jonah in his anger and bitterness. Because we don't have the scripture saying, and Jonah repented and was happy again. It's not there. We actually leave Jonah with those questions that God's asked him. And the statement he made about, should I not be concerned about the great city of Nineveh? And that's where the scriptures, leave him. Still in his anger and bitterness. His anger that God has dared show compassion on people he didn't like. Excuse me. Oh, that we don't get caught up into that loop. the people of Nineveh, who have been saved from God's wrath, who used to be doing wicked stuff, are rejoicing. Jonah's sat in a heap, sulking, angry enough to die. Unforgiveness eats away at our hearts. Did back then, still does now. Understanding God's view of forgiveness is vital for every single one of us. We've said this, I've said this so many times in Zozo conversations and Zozo sessions, but it's not, forgiveness is not about letting people off the hook. That was Jonah's fundamental problem. If God relents, those people have been forgiven, but they've been let off the hook for all the bad stuff they've done, all the persecution, all the idolatry, all the wickedness. They're being let off the hook. That's not what forgiveness is about. It's not about letting people off the hook, and it's not about dishonouring anybody either, for that matter. It's about ending our human desire to see them pay for their wrongdoing and releasing them to God and saying, God, you do what you want to do. And if God's desire is to see that people group saved and healed and forgiven, set free, then us being bold enough to step back and let God do it. Us being bold enough to say, God, do what you want to do. Because this is where sometimes in our Christian experience we can find this weird clash between being angry about what people have done and struggling to forgive them, and yet wanting everyone to be saved. Yeah? We want to see the world saved. We want to see Stoneham saved. We want to see Suffolk saved. We want to see God doing amazing things. But there might be 2 or 3 people in your heart you're going, well, I don't think I can forgive them because they did that to me. And we've got to break that cycle. And Jonah couldn't do that. And Jonah ended up a lonely, sad individual. Choose my words carefully there, but yeah, he did. That's where he ended up. Once we realise these things about what God wants to do from a forgiveness viewpoint, we can move on. We are freer. And I believe in my heart and my own experience sort of bears this out. I believe in my heart you begin to hear God more clearly because you're not focusing on stuff. You begin to hear God more clearly and you're ready to follow God more clearly. Forgive as you've been forgiven. Colossians 3:13. Yeah. Don't let your story, even if it's a fraction as bad as Jonah's situation, but don't let your story be like his story. Remember, called by God he was, but he had to be rescued by God. But he was still anointed by God to do the job. See the loop? He's called by God, totally rejected him, totally enough rejected him. And maybe that's where we've been at times. We hear God calling, we've been prompted by God, perhaps we just need to it may be just coming to know him, even just come to realise something about him. And we hear the call, we've got this thing in my mind, but rejecting him. And we're walking away. But that doesn't disqualify us. Because actually, look at Jonah. He was still anointed and still did the job. I advise us not to take that to the next bit, because Jonah was then still grumpy at the end. I want us to be free. If we obedient to God, see God's anointing, go God's way, let's find the freedom that the Ninevites found, not stay in the grumpiness that Jonah found. We need that to go. But he was, we can see our own circumstances in this. You've got a better destiny ahead of you than where Jonah left himself. Don't let misunderstandings about God's compassion and forgiveness keep your heart from following your destiny. Seek God. Sort yourself out with God. Get forgiven. And move forward. Because God just wants to meet you on the other side. I think the biggest thing around that picture is, it's like God wanted to meet him on the beach, and rather than this conflict going on, really a sense of, let's put it in terms of Jesus, because it's easier to think of Jesus as a man, because he was, and the sense of Jesus coming on that beach and the two embracing, and then walking forward arm in arm, so shoulder around shoulder, arm around shoulder, walking forward into the destiny in the future. I think so much about what Jonah's life could have been, and yet I see where Scripture leaves him, a grumpy old man, not necessarily old, but grumpy man, and yet we can have it so much different. So that's where I want to leave us. I have to leave Jonah, having left him last time on the beach, having been spewed out of a fish. Now we have to leave him in his grumpiness. But my challenge is, don't stay there yourself. Be aware, sort it out, come before God, get someone to pray with you, seek him. Maybe you have to say, Lord, I choose to forgive so-and-so, or that group of people, or this situation, and move on. We can help you with prayer, you can seek prayer, you can just find freedom. Freedom that the Ninevites began to rejoice in. So, that's the word for today. That's all I want to leave it. Be inspired by what God is saying to you, but make changes if you need to make changes. And remember, it's not about your performance. It's about God's will and God's help to get you to that point. So if you're with us online, thank you. We'll see you again very soon. Be blessed. Have a great week. If you need prayer, pop it in the chat somewhere. Ask us. People will be praying for you. In the room, if people need prayer, then come and talk to us. There's people here that want to pray and help you find freedom. And we're going to worship. Thank you.
I found that really